7-10 As late as the time of Samuel, unfaithful Israel experienced harassment from the Moabites. 1-12. 9-11. During reigns of Saul, David, and Solomon. Difficulties with the Moabites continued for years afterward. Israel's first king, Saul, victoriously warred against them. 1-14. 47 Since the Moabites would therefore have regarded Saul as an enemy, understandably the king of Moab was agreeable to having the parents of David, the man whom Saul had outlawed, dwell at Mizpah in Moab. 1-22. 3-4. Later, when David himself ruled as king, there also was warfare between Israel and Moab. The Moabites were completely subdued and were made to pay tribute to David. Apparently at the end of the conflict 2/3 of Moab's fighting men were put to death. It seems that David had them lie down on the ground in a row and then measured this row to determine the 2/3 to be put to death and the 1/3 to be preserved alive. 2-8. 2-11, 12. 1-18. 2-11 Possibly in the course of the same conflict, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada struck down the 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. 2-23. 20. 1-11. 22 David's decisive victory over the Moabites was a fulfillment of Balaam's prophetic words uttered over 400 years earlier. A star will certainly step forth out of Jacob, and a scepter will indeed rise out of Israel. And he will certainly break apart the temples of Moab's head and the cranium of all the sons of tumult of war. New 24. 17 Also apparently with reference to this victory, the psalmist spoke of God's regarding Moab as his washing pot. PS 60. 8. 108. 9. David's son Solomon, however, disregarded God's law and married Moabite women who had not become worshippers of Jehovah. To please them, Solomon built a high place to their god Chemosh. Not until some 3 centuries later, during Josiah's reign, was this high place made unfit for worship. 1-11. 1-7. 2-23. 13. Until the Judean exile. Sometime after the secession of Israel from Judah, the Moabites appear to have regained territory in of the Arnon. On the black basalt stele known as the Moabite stone, Moab's king Mesha speaks of Israel's king Omri as taking possession of the region of Medeba. Since the Tableland of Medeba was in the territory of Reuben Jos 13. 15, 16, Israel had apparently lost this area to the Moabites so that Omri later had to recapture it. Evidently Moab remained under Israelite control during the reigns of Kings Omri and Ahab. But following the death of Ahab, Moab's king Mesha, who paid to the king of Israel 100,000 otex to execute Muritra Longo, Moab 421 like blood to the Moabites. Wrongly concluding that the allied armies had slaughtered one another, the Moabites abandoned all caution and came to the Israelite camp, only to be put to flight. As the battle progressed, Moabite cities were ruined, good tracts of land were filled with stones, trees were cut down, and springs were stopped up. When King Mesha found himself penned up in the city of Kir-Hareseth with the battle going against him, he, with 700 men, unsuccessfully tried to break through to the king of Edom. Finally he took his firstborn son and offered him up as a burnt sacrifice upon the wall. For this or some other reason there came to be great indignation against Israel and the siege was abandoned. 2-3. 6-27. As this humiliating defeat did not take place on foreign soil but brought devastation to the land of Moab, reasonably a considerable period of time would have been required for recovery. So it seems likely that it was at an earlier date during Jehoshaphat's reign that Moab combined with the forces of Ammon and the mountainous region of Seir to attack Judah. By Jehovah's intervention the 3 armies turned on one another and destroyed themselves. 2-20. 1-22-24 Some scholars believe that this event is alluded to at Psalm 83. 4-9. Compare 2-20. 14 with PS 83. Sup. In subsequent years enmity continued between Moab and Israel. After the death of the prophet Elisha, marauding bands of Moabites regularly invaded Israel. 2-13. 20 About 2 centuries later, in Joachim's time, similar Moabite bands contributed to the ruin of Judah during its final years. 2-24. 2. With the destruction of Jerusalem in 607 BCE, Jews sought refuge in Moab, returning to Judah when Gedaliah was appointed governor. Jah 40. 11, 12. After the exile. After an Israelite remnant returned from Babylonian exile in 537 BCE, some married Moabite wives. But at Ezra's admonition they dismissed these wives and their children. Ez 9. 1, 2. 10. 10, 11, 44 years later Nehemiah found a similar situation. Many Israelites had taken Moabite wives. Ne 13. 1-3, 23. Moab in prophecy. In harmony with its long history of opposition to Israel, Moab is mentioned among the hard-set enemies of Jehovah's people. Compare Isra 11. 14. Condemned for approaching Israel and for pride and haughtiness, Moab was finally to become a desolation like Sodom. Zep 2. 8-11.